Hello, I'm Tinsai Gabriel. You're watching Pulse of Africa, and today we are joined by Dr. Biqila Hurisa, a prominent political figure and governance expert in Ethiopia. Dr. Biqila currently serves as the Minister Coordinator of the Center of Democratic System Building at the Office of the Ethiopian Prime Minister. He is also Head of Public and International Relations at Prosperity Party. With extensive experience in public administration, diplomacy, and political communication, Dr. Biqila has been a key voice in Ethiopia's ongoing nation-building efforts. His insights are especially relevant in understanding Ethiopia's regional relationships, including the continued dialogue surrounding the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Today, he shares his perspectives on this situation surrounding Ethiopia's engagement with Egypt. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Recently, there's been some tense situations, especially after Egypt's Foreign Affairs Minister Badr Abdelati made a statement, and I quote, saying, "We have tried negotiations for more than 13 years. Unfortunately, there has been neither seriousness nor good faith from the Ethiopian side, which used the negotiations to impose unilateral policies." He continued to say that the GERD is illegitimate and that negotiations are over. Why do you think the situation has escalated to this point? And is it true that the Ethiopian government just used the negotiations, as he says, to impose unilateral policies?
Thank you for the question. I think the Egyptians official, in terms of uttering these very hard words, simply indicates the failure to understand the current reality in the world in terms of how national interests are promoted. So I strongly believe that they are unable to properly articulate their own interests and also promoting their own interests, because the colonial era narratives are no more working, and that's over, and it will never come back. So the mentality of monopoly over Nile waters is a wrong narrative, which I believe is against the national interest of the Egyptians themselves.
Yeah.
So what the rhetoric of monopoly and historical rights has already died, and it will never come back. So they are simply promoting this very obsolete rhetoric, and that doesn't meet the interests of human beings. So the very irresponsible strategy and very hard-worded communication that intensifies the relationship and affects the relationship between the two countries does not do justice in terms of amicably resolving the problems that we have with regard to the Nile waters. So the only mechanism and the only strategy that would have worked is just negotiating, keeping on negotiations. So Egypt tries to, implement all the non-peaceful strategies in terms of promoting its interests regarding the Nile waters, including recruiting, training, arming and deploying very weak and fragmented agents, so that Ethiopia is destabilized and the peace is affected. So all this effect, the hard-worded communications, and also affecting the peace and stability of this country, are all obsolete and against their own interests. So I strongly believe that the rejecting negotiations is strongly against the interests of the Egyptians themselves. So Ethiopia is a very proud country, known for freedom. And Ethiopia is a state that has never been colonized. And we know the freedom, the value and benefits of freedom. So we are working towards promoting our own freedom in terms of using our natural resources for our own development. We don't seek any permission from anyone in terms of using our natural resources for the prosperity of Ethiopian citizens. So it's not about categorically rejecting. It's a mechanism. It's a very irresponsible mechanism of intensifying the relationship and affecting the relationship. That's what I believe in.
Do you believe they have any legal standing? Because they usually turn to the agreements made in 1929 and 1959, these colonial time treaties, and they use that to say that they have legal standing to go against Ethiopia developing the dam on the Nile.
Yeah, the previous treaties, the 1929 and 1959 treaties, meaningless, totally meaningless, and
Why?
Treaties that can never be applied. One,
they can't be applied today?
No, they can never be applied. They can never be applied in today's situation, because today we are in the 21st century where international treaties should be, to the benefit of all stakeholders. Yeah. So in terms of, using those treaties, which Ethiopia has never been signatory of these treaties, and Ethiopia is categorically, denied of the right to negotiate. So that's why Ethiopia can never be bound by those treaties. So what we promote is just coming to the negotiation table today and keeping on the negotiations and dialogue with the international principles of mutual benefits, shared responsibility, and amicable solution for our problems. So that's the only way. Otherwise, the 1929 and 1959 treaties are obsolete treaties that Ethiopia has categorically rejected. Yeah. And that never serves the interests of Ethiopia, because Ethiopia has never been part of those treaties.
Yeah, Ethiopia was not a signatory.
Exactly. Yeah. Ethiopia was not a signatory, and it is against the interest of Ethiopia, where about 86% of the water share emanates from Ethiopia, and Ethiopia was not a signatory of this treaty. That's why Ethiopia categorically rejects those treaties.
Yeah, Ethiopia's Foreign Affairs Ministry, in a statement as a reply, has said that Egypt is pretending to negotiate while refusing to engage in any meaningful dialogue has now been made public and direct. Egypt has rejected dialogue and is doubling down on its hostile rhetoric with a clear intention to orchestrate an escalation. Now, I want to ask you, what does Ethiopia believe is motivating Egypt's unwillingness to engage? Is it political pressure or a desire to control over Nile waters, or an attempt to internationalize the matter?
Yeah, Egypt tries to promote its interests through a non-peaceful manner. And Ethiopia was always ready and committed for negotiation and dialogue. And on the other side, Egypt has never been truly committed to negotiations and dialogue. And it tries to pretend that it's ready for negotiation, and practically it has used all the mechanisms to disrupt negotiations and amicable ways of solving problems. So truly, the Ethiopian Foreign Ministry has truly articulated the really? Issue. Yeah.
You don't think they were ever trying to genuinely come to an understanding?
They have never been truly ready and committed for negotiations. They simply pretend that they are ready, but on the other side, they try to disrupt negotiations and peaceful ways of solving problems. That has been the policy of pretending to negotiate while actually disrupting negotiations and peaceful ways of solving problems.
Ethiopia often says it supports cooperation and negotiational agreement, right? So what does, if it's not too late, what does a fair and equitable agreement look like from Ethiopia's point of view?
It all, emanates from dialogue, and it all originates from peaceful ways of solving problems on a round table. So that's the only way through which we can solve these disparities. So what we say is equitable and fair utilization is a result of continuous dialogue and continuous
Yeah, but
discussion.
What does an equitable and fair agreement look like from Ethiopia's point of view?
Yeah, Ethiopia contributes about 86% of the water shares, and Ethiopia has a right to develop its own natural resources and utilize. But the international law says whenever cross-border rivers are utilized, there should be fair and equitable utilization, with the sense that the lower riparian countries are not significantly affected. So we are ready and committed to maintain that. In terms of utilizing our own resources while not significantly affecting the lower riparian countries. That's what fairness is.
Yes.
That's what fairness is. That's what we are demanding, and that's what we have been demanding for long.
In an interview with EBC-FM, you said that hate speech and misinformation are an attack on sovereignty. As head of the Public and International Relations for Prosperity Party, what communication strategies do you believe are most effective in countering misinformation about Gard? Because there is so much.
Exactly. There is a very serious misinformation, including hate speech and disinformation with regard to the GERD. So our historical enemies use hate speech, misinformation and disinformation as a strategy to, to misinform the international community. So this includes hate speech. And what I said is this hate speech is an attack on sovereignty in the sense that misinforming the international community and using hate speech and hard-worded, approach in their communication is a true attack to our sovereignty. So a very proper strategy in terms of, positive communication is principle-based, true information that can, inform the international community with true and reliable information. So misinforming, disinforming and hate speech are truly attacks on sovereignty. So Egypt has been using that for a long time, and that should stop. And it is using all the possible media through, unverified information that includes hate speech and misinformation to, misinform the international community, which is an attack, and that they are using and have been using as a strategy.
Ethiopia has many water resources that cross its borders and benefit its neighbors. Yet some actors refute Ethiopia's legitimate request for access to the sea. Has the international media fairly addressed such issues?
Yeah, it's very true that Ethiopia plays a very positive role in terms of, contributing water resources to the neighboring countries. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of, rivers that cross Ethiopia's border and flow into the neighboring countries. So our neighboring countries have been using the water resources in Ethiopia for their economic and social development. There are a lot of neighboring countries that have effectively utilized the water resources from Ethiopia for agriculture, for irrigation, and for other social development and infrastructure development purposes. While contributing significantly to the water resources in East Africa, Ethiopia has been, pushed away from international water resources, including the access to the sea. Ethiopia is now rising. Ethiopia is now rising in terms of properly and boldly articulating its interests and its national agenda with regard to the access to the sea. So it has been a very bold national agenda. It has been a very bold national interest issue that citizens are now very boldly presenting before the international community. So we don't, simply demand the international community to provide us access to the sea. Just we are presenting our legitimate demand. We are trying to, inform the international community in such a way that they can understand what Ethiopia is demanding in terms of access to the sea. It's a development issue. It's a national interest issue, which is legitimate and which is principle-based. So what we are demanding in terms of access to the sea is within the principle of the international laws, within the principles of diplomacy and principle-based approach. That's what we are demanding. And I strongly believe the international community will gradually understand Ethiopia's legitimate and humble request in terms of access to the sea.
Well, there have been many landlocked countries that have negotiated port access without any controversy. Why do you think Ethiopia's situation is different?
Yeah, Ethiopia's geopolitical situation is, I think, the main factor. So Ethiopia is located in a very strategically important place. So Ethiopia's development and prosperity, and Ethiopia rising as a very giant economy in East Africa, might have created some sort of threat to our historical enemies. That might be the case because Ethiopia is a very big country, a huge economy with with a history of freedom. That boldly articulates its own national interest agenda before the international law. And Ethiopia's rising as a giant economy and as a giant society and state in East Africa might have created some sort of threat for our historical enemies.
Okay, I want to talk about the Meddemer philosophy, which translates to unity, which is a philosophy that has become the blueprint of the Ethiopian government. What has this philosophy brought in terms of a culture of collaboration to forge sustainable peace and development throughout the Horn and beyond?
Yeah, generally, መደመር is just about synergy, about cooperation, about working together, and about prospering and developing together. So the መደመር philosophy has been a very good cure to solve Ethiopia's political, economic, and social challenges. We have used መደመር philosophy to build a cohesive society. We have used መደመር philosophy to bring the public, the government, and the private sector together in such a way that cooperative and collaborative approach can develop Ethiopia's economy. So we have benefited a lot from መደመር philosophy. So that መደመር philosophy can be extended to the neighboring countries in terms of regional integration for mutual prosperity and development. I strongly believe through መደመር philosophy we can integrate the horn of Africa's economy. We can promote people-to-people relations in East Africa through መደመር philosophy. We can integrate the infrastructure and services in the Horn of Africa through መደመር philosophy so that everybody contributes and everybody benefits from the outputs and outcomes of the development. That's why መደመር philosophy can go beyond Ethiopia's horizons and integrate the Horn of Africa through politics, economy, diplomacy, and people-to-people relations.
Moving on to my last question, what would the main benefits of the Ethiopian Great Renaissance Dam be in terms of regional integration and how it would propel the region towards continued socio-economic development?
I strongly believe that the Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is a transformative infrastructure project. So it's beyond electricity. It's beyond electricity in the sense that we can use the GERD project and the impacts and outcomes of GERD for integrating the African states in general and the East African countries in particular. I strongly believe that the GERD can be used as an instrument for economic interdependence among African countries because GERD is beyond electricity. It is about infrastructure. It is about trade relationships, business integration. It's about infrastructure interconnectivity. That's why we can use the GERD and the benefits of the GERD for strengthening political and diplomatic cooperation among African states. That's what's taking place now. And I also believe that GERD can be used to interconnect African states in terms of energy connectivity, infrastructure connectivity, business connectivity, and other industry connectivity and the like. So energy independence is one of the outcomes of the GERD that can be used as a flagship for other African countries because Ethiopia developed a very huge project that can fulfill the energy demands of not only Ethiopia but also other African countries. So that's how states are interconnected. That's how neighboring countries are interconnected in terms of infrastructure, energy, trade, business, and services. So we can use the GERD as a flagship project to politically, diplomatically, and economically interconnect African countries in general and East African countries in particular.
Thank you so much for coming here and joining us here today, Dr. Biqila. Thank you for sharing your perspectives.
Thank you.